In India, if your family's a business family, you're more or less just going to college to get a degree and party, and you're going to come back and manage the family business.
The month that I joined, we hit the first $1 million in transactional revenue.
What's something you learned, seeing your mom and dad own their small businesses?
So what we would do is we would sell to founders, and what they would do is they would put all of their shareholder information into our system.
If you don't raise a couple $1 million, and if you're not a 10, 20, $50 million company, you're not successful in like the VC startup space.
Tomi is a platform that makes it easier for people to buy and manage property together.
When you decided to I'm going to do this, what's step one? Where do you start?
Step one of the journey was...
Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. Today we have on Cody. Cody's been an owner of various businesses. He was an early employee at Carta, where he spent almost 8 years. Investor and limited partner in a lot of companies. And you've most recently started your own startup called Tomi. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I like asking folks, where do you think your entrepreneurial journey started?
Probably from my parents. Both mom and dad were small business owners here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dad was a professional fighter growing up, professional kickboxer. His last fight was the day that he found out my mom was pregnant with me, and she made him retire. And then he got into teaching martial arts and kickboxing to other people. He was coaching, training. And then my mom has been a personal trainer and Pilates instructor.
Nice, pretty fit family.
Yeah, relatively. So I grew up in their small business, in their studios, and I took martial arts from my dad, and was around all of that environment, seeing my parents kind of the center of their own small universe. And then the first I dipped my toe in it, so to speak, in college when my mom decided that her and I should buy this neighborhood bike shop that was going out of business right around the corner. And yeah, fun fact about Minneapolis is it's every year it's kind of a battle between us and Portland in terms of the number one city to bike in.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, not a lot of people do. Right? Why would you? But it's because it's very flat. There's lots of trails and a ton of lakes and stuff, right? So my mom has lived it. I'm dialed in and joining you from the house that I was basically born into. My mom has lived here for 40 years.
Nice.
This was, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 years ago. Couple blocks down, we're right by a fantastic little lake here in South Minneapolis. Local bike shop where she pumped up. We would pump our tires up for air. She goes there one day, air's not on, doors are closed. She's like, "What's going on?" She knows the owner. Got in touch with him. He's like, "I'm closing the shop. I got another space." And she's like, "My son's been gone to school now for 2 years. I was going to school about an hour north of the city. I was playing football up there."
Okay.
So during the summer, I would stay up there and hang out and party and work out with my teammates and stuff. And I think she thought that this was a
way to get you home.
That's exactly right. And she wove a nice narrative, which was it'll be, an entrepreneurial experience, and we can do it together. It'll be fun. But ultimately, I think she just wanted me home for the summers. So yeah, so that was the first experience. And then after I graduated, I ended up moving to San Francisco, and that obviously helped with the entrepreneurial journey as well.
Nice. What's something you learned, seeing your mom and dad own their small businesses? You used to spend a lot of time in the studios. Do you take anything away from the experience, or do you think anything you saw and learned there, even if you didn't realize it in the moment, but probably adds to your skill set today that makes you a better founder?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind is a realization that I had many years later, after I would say that I was relatively grounded in Silicon Valley, working for, at that point I was at Carta, but I realized the difference between linear and exponential activities. Both of my parents were basically their income potential was correlated to the number of hours that they were putting in teaching, right? And I don't know that I thought about it deeply in, around that phase of life, but after, once I got out to San Francisco and you start working for software companies and you start seeing the reach that software, has, right. In technology. And so that was a realization that I had, where I was just there are people that are doing, linear services businesses. And you're right. I started to understand how those things are being valued by, professional investors, right? You want ARR, or you used to want ARR. I don't know that you want ARR anymore. That's a conversation maybe for another time.
I've heard from some folks recently that right now the current trend is 40K MRR or more to raise
Mm-hmm.
like a big seed or series A. And so I'm like, okay. I mean, at 40K MRR, I'm not raising money. I don't need your money anymore. Like I need your money to get to 40K
Depends
MRR.
on the business. It
Yeah,
depends on
yeah.
the business, right? Yeah, yeah. I would say like that's the biggest one is like just being able to juxtapose like, and I think that this is this is not an uncommon reality for so many people, right? Like, as my parents are small town, well, not small town, like it was a big city in Minneapolis, but it's a flyover state, and they were their own entrepreneur. They were entrepreneurs in the context of being in a Midwest city.
What took you to San Francisco, right? Going from, because in my understanding, and like I'm drawing narratives to India, maybe this doesn't exist, but in India, if your family's a business family, you're more or less just going to college to get a degree and party, and you're going to come back and manage the family business, right? Like that's the majority tendency for Indian families, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your parents have these businesses, the bike shop. What takes you to SF? Why not stay home, work with them, build a business, learn, grow, whatever?
The SF decision was kind of a jump ball, like coin toss sort of thing. I was about a year into a sales job. I would say like my first professional, quote unquote, like post college, going into an office. I was brokering third party. I was a 3PL provider, so I was brokering freight for a company called Freight Quote. They were basically their claim to fame is that they were the default freight provider. They were the default freight provider for eBay. So if you were shipping anything larger than like a parcel, they like we were the back end or the engine that helped you kind of price it out, and then we would go help find transport for it. Did that. In doing that, I met a buddy of mine, still a very good friend and soon to be a family member because he's about to marry my sister. But I met my homie Tom.
I'm guessing you made that intro.
I did make that intro. Yes, yes. It was an organic intro. It was not a deliberate one, but it did come to fruition as such. We joined the same day, did really well. Like we were like fresh grads and like just saying like we were just gonna go get into the sales game, and we were working with side by side with people who were like twice our age, right? In some instances 3 times our age, like full on adults, and we still felt like kids. Then we were performing. We were like the top performers on the team, right? So we were like, oh, we know how to sell. We can do this, right? We got enough confidence in our ability, and we spent enough time together that we were just like, I kind of led the push a little bit more than he did, but he was down for it, and we were like, let's go do this somewhere else, man. Like, let's go to a big city. Let's go have an adventure. And so we looked at New York, we looked at Chicago, we looked at LA, and then ultimately landed on San Francisco. One, because I had a buddy who was able to connect us with some folks out there, and I believed that it was going to be like, that was like, this is probably where the best job market is right now.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
What takes you to Carta? You're pretty early on in Carta. I don't know how big Carta was when you joined, roughly 30 or a million in ARR.
The month that I joined, we hit the first million in transactional revenue. We weren't even an ARR business
Oh,
when I
okay,
joined.
got it.
So they did their first million the month that I joined, not because of me. I had nothing to do with that. And the team was like, I was like early 30s.
Okay,
Something like
nice.
that. Yeah.
What gives you conviction in going to a small company, right? And the analogy I'm trying to make is for anyone deciding, should I join a company early? Should I be in the first 10 or 20 people? Should I start my own thing? Should I go big tech? Was that decision well thought out, or is just a job? And it could have been both, right? But
yeah, I think it's one of those things it's subconsciously thought out, right? Like I think you spend enough time understanding like who you are, where you are in life, what you want. But it's not like I had like a big list of pros and cons to joining a small company versus a large company. I was lucky, man. Like the previous company I was selling, I was in ad tech. I was selling digital ads. And I happened to work with for about a year a guy who had experience working at like one of the only companies in this cap table space. Completely random, right? Completely random. And I like to say that it took him a couple months of convincing me and like telling the story, pitching me on like, his vision, and the way that he sold me on it was like, look, we're gonna go create a private exchange. We're gonna make it so private companies can stay private as long as they want, because we're going to solve liquidity for the private markets. And I was like, dope, that sounds cool. Let's go do it. And the reason I was able to do that is because I was in my, at that point, late 20s, and I was single and didn't have any other, significant responsibilities other than my dog. I could take that risk, right? Yeah. So that was it. And I do think that the fact that, my upbringing too, where I was not unfamiliar to like be in charge of hiring people and doing this, like going and kind of seeking that, that aspect of it or that flavor of it in Silicon Valley versus here in Minnesota.
What made you stay around for 8 years at Carta?
I mean, I to this day still wholeheartedly kind of believe in the higher purpose of what Carta is solving, which is like, I think that like the purest form of like agency and financial independence is ownership, and it is the best way to align incentives in the long run. And I didn't believe that like going in. This is something that it was learned, and I evolved. My philosophy around it evolved as the years went by, and I got to like engage with founders and VCs, and that's why I stuck around, is because it's like the people is like, it's just such a fantastic opportunity. Like I got to be on the front lines. It was me and the guy who brought me over, who I'd worked at the previous company. We were like the first two salespeople and like go to market. We did everything. And so we got to just like spend our days talking to early stage startups and founders and like CFOs of big prominent like VC backed companies. And then as I kind of jumped around into business development, and then I eventually actually kind of like created my own role there, which I called network enablement. It was this ability to continue to learn as it relates to different operational like functions, projects and initiatives within the organization. And then it was the fact that I got to interface with like fantastic people. Like I got to go meet VCs in different markets. I got to go talk to all the, the biggest, most prominent startups and like really impressive founders. And so like, that was like, I felt very fortunate. Even in that time, I could realize, I was like, this is a fantastic opportunity where then I could have been in a similar situation selling to CTOs or project managers. Right. And it just wouldn't have been as, in my opinion, as interesting as like continuing to kind of like be out and engaging with that like stakeholder contingency.
What's one piece of advice you'd have for someone who's early at a startup or smaller company? How do you make the most of that experience, both from a learning point of view as well as a career development point of view, right? Because what you just said is you went in as sales GTM, you created a role for network enablement, and my understanding of why that happened was you found sort of where you fit in, and then you went to leadership. You're like, hey, like, let me do this because it's better, whatever. And like, there's a whole vision you painted, right? Do you have any advice for folks early on how to make the most of that experience? Because personally, I feel like at a smaller startup, there's lesser corporate lines. You have the option to do a little bit of whatever you want, right?
Yep.
So if you're in tech, you like product, you could figure out a way where there's a 80-20, right? Let me spend 20% of my time on product, and you slowly move into that role, all right? Yep. If you're customer success and you want to go to product, like there's certain tracks that are known. Well, harder to do that at a big company, much easier at a smaller.
Totally.
So keeping that in mind, do you have any advice for anyone who's early at a company and how they should navigate that journey, or what questions should they be asking themselves to make the most out of the experience?
First off, like I think it's like safe to operate under the assumption that people that are joining early stage companies are doing so because there's like an innate level of curiosity that they have, right? They want to go out and be generalists, right? And that's why it is that you join these things, because the roles are much broader than they are once you get to a much more mature organization. So like continue to lean into that and be curious and look for opportunities that kind of strike a balance between your skill set and what it is you want to do and or learn, right? That was it for me. And I mean, like I get like for all the reasons I just said, is like I was able to do the sales thing for 4 or 5 years, right? And just like selling the the Carta's flagship cap table product, but then ultimately moved into like business development. And exactly like you said, I got to a point where I was like, it was actually kind of interesting where like we were so far behind in terms of our CR. There was a whole story that I won't belabor you with, but like we had Salesforce at the very beginning, and then CEO kind of pulls the CEO card and is like, I'm going to make a decision and bring in another CRM system without really talking to anyone. And that did not go over great. And so we had this other CRM in place, and it lasted for about 2 years, and then we put Salesforce back in. And so, yeah, like there's a whole other thing. We lost our COO in large part over it. And like, that's
I'm nothing against Salesforce. If you'll sponsor me. But
yeah, right.
What I don't like about their model is you pay a hefty fee to use it, and then you pay a hefty fee to hire engineers to implement it.
Yeah.
Which is, I understand why it exists, but fundamentally, I feel like software should be self-serve. It shouldn't need a dev to implement for me. If it
Yeah.
does, I feel like there's. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a. I just personally don't like the. I need a Salesforce engineer to make a chip button.
Totally. I mean, that makes sense. But I mean, I agree with you, full stop. And also, you got to look back at like when that platform was built and the degree of like customization and all of the integrations that they were able to start like building on top of it, right? Because now you've got like, you have your CRM that is also for so many companies that also reach that scale. Like that thing is one of the few systems that can truly kind of like grow at every phase of the enterprise. So we re-implement Salesforce, and by this point we are a much more mature company and much further along than we should be for just getting like address information into our database for our customers, right? So like we're like going through, and I'm poking around a little bit, and I start just running some reports, and I'm looking at like, okay, I want to cross reference the number of startups in each of these markets with the number of customers that we have and see what our market penetration is against all these ecosystems, right? And like venture, like so many other things in the world are these power law distributions, right? San Francisco's half, New York is 25%, everything else is like the rest, right? And so I started running the numbers and like plotting just kind of how we were doing. And I was like, it doesn't make any sense to me that in New York and San Francisco, or I think I was looking at it on the state level at that point. So New York and California, we've got close to like 25% market share. But when I look at like Georgia and Texas and Illinois, right, and all of these places, we're sitting at like 10 to 14%. And I'm like, these markets are an order of magnitude smaller than the ones that we have. And I was like, the only reason that these markets, the only reason that we have the penetration in New York and California that we have is because like that's where our hub is. That's where our focus is. We're spending all of our time there. I said, we are spending no time in any of these markets. And this whole premise around Carta at the time, for those people who don't know, we were a cap table company. So what we would do is we would sell to founders, and what they would do is they would put all of their shareholder information into our system, and then they would send out those securities, whether it was a common share certificate or a preferred share certificate or a stock option to an employee. They would send it out to all of the employees and all the investors who own shares, right? And if you start thinking about that from a network perspective, right, it's like it's a one to many type relationship where it's like one company sends out their securities, it goes to one investor who has a portfolio of companies. They see that this is a much better way of doing things because the alternative was like paying lawyers thousands of dollars to literally, I mean, when I joined, our sales pitch was, don't pay your lawyers $1,000 to print and send you via FedEx a stock certificate that you're going to put in your, it was like, that's like a pretty easy sale. Another reason that I could make it 8 years, I was like, this is not the hardest thing to do in the world. We had a great product and like a really valuable solution, right? And so I was looking at all this data, and I just went to the executives, and I was 4 or 5 years in. The sales team was mature. I was managing a team of like a dozen or so people. I was about ready to pull all of my hair out because I was spending so much time in these ROE meetings on the sales team, which is rules of engagement, right? I was like, it just felt like I was just bored, I guess is the long and short of it. And so I was like, look, like I believe that with a little bit more energy in these markets, we can accelerate that growth, because all we need to do is activate the right law firm and the right VC and a couple of their good startups.
And you get network effects.
And you get network effects. And I'm saying that like these are the activity, the enablement threshold for Austin, Texas, and for Chicago, Illinois is so much lower than what you need in San Francisco and New York and LA.
Just because it's more concentrated.
It's because it's more, yeah, that's exactly right. It's because there's a few rainmakers in those markets, and that was the pitch. And I basically, wouldn't shut up for like 3 or 4 months to like the 3 executives that ultimately needed to sign off, and then that was it. They were like, okay, like go hit the road. And my thesis was, I want to go to these places, and I'm not gonna like do 3-4 days in there. I'm gonna go to Atlanta for 6 weeks, and then I'm gonna go to Chicago for a month, and I'm gonna time it around conferences
and Tech Week and everything.
Exactly. And I did that for about a year, and then COVID hit. Yeah. So yeah, that's my network enablement side of things.
So you're at Carta, you decide to leave. How soon between that and starting Tomi did you have, or did you already have the idea, or what was that journey? What was that process for you?
So Tomi is something that I've been thinking about.
And just quickly tell people what Tomi is.
Yeah, for sure. Tomi is a platform that makes it easier for people to buy and manage property together, right? So it's mostly oriented around homeownership, like people who want to buy and occupy the property for some degree of time. You can buy it as a primary residence. You can also use it as a vacation home. But we're focused more on the ownership and the usage side of things as opposed to just like investment platforms, right? If you want to go invest in real estate. And so, yeah, we're leveraging a bunch of AI. We're doing all the legal agreements and the structuring, and or at least we're drafting the legal agreements. We'll still get them reviewed by lawyers and everything. And then we're developing kind of I would say, the operating system or the technology layer to help groups of people manage the day-to-day governance and decision-making and scheduling and expenses all in one centralized platform. This is Tomi is an idea that I've been thinking about. I mean, there's stuff that I haven't prefaced, but like it's like the real estate work that I've been doing for the last 8 years with my family has definitely informed kind of my thinking about what's possible as it relates to Tomi. And then I would say that like me traveling the U.S. and thinking about the ways, like what is possible for people in that station of life, like what age, and people that want to explore and potentially like invest in communities that is not exactly where they're like living or working full time. So like it's been percolating for years, right? It's been like this idea about Tomi has been percolating for years. It was about, I would say, 7 or 8 months after leaving Carta, that I decided to like jump off the cliff and start building. And the reason it was 7 or 8 months is because at that time, I was in Southeast Asia, because the work that I had done here for network enablement actually kind of, I would argue, led me to Singapore, because was the next role that I basically took at Carta, was kind of heading up corporate expansion efforts for APAC. So I was like the first U.S. employee that relocated to Singapore. I was out there for 2.5 years. I got to help scale and grow that team and experience a different like region and culture in a very similar context to what I knew, which was like this whole kind of like startup venture ecosystem. Fantastic experience. Loved my time out there. Was fortunate enough to like basically build the Singapore office in terms of revenue and headcount to what Carta was when I joined, which I think was really ironic. And so I after 8 years of being at Carta and still being in Southeast Asia, I took 6-7 months and just traveled and enjoyed life, which was awesome. Yeah. But then when I got back stateside, like that's when I was ready to like start building.
How important do you think taking breaks, sort of living life, is versus just being on the grind the whole time?
I think it totally depends on who you are. I think like some people, all they know is grind. And I think a lot of other people, it's the tortoise and the hare. It's like, how long can you push at, in fifth gear going 100 miles an hour before you burn out, right? And crash the car, versus, kind of that slow, methodical, like doing what is, it all comes down to like, what's important to you? Like, what are you optimizing for? For me, like, this is what I want to build. This is what I want to work on. I want to spend my time. And so when I wake up, it's the first thing I think about. When I go to bed, it's usually the last thing I'm thinking of. And so it just occupies so much headspace that it's kind of hard to turn off. But at the same time, like, if I've got a busy stretch of like 3-4 hours of calls, like I'm going to go for a run in the middle of the day. Right. Or I will like go watch a football game. Like it's not like all consuming, which I think is the only way to make it like work for, years on end.
And I think that's what's super important, is like you have to understand what kind of builder are you. There are people who grind and they talk about the grind and like 80-hour, 90-hour weeks. I'm like, great. But I feel like what happens is a lot of people will be like, oh, that guy's doing so much. Why am I not doing it?
Yes.
Like you don't need to be doing it, right? But
that's right.
Again, if you have the right methods in place, you're working on the right problems, you're just chipping away. You don't have to grind 90-hour weeks. You can. You're perfectly, you can do once in a while, but I think understanding, like you said, where do you lie in the spectrum helps you make these decisions. Because I think something that used to happen to me was I'd feel like, oh, I'm not being productive. I'm not working on the right problems. Like sometimes I just don't feel like doing anything that's productive. Like I just want to binge TV for a couple hours, right?
Right.
And so I think being okay with that versus sometimes earlier I used to feel like if I'm into like leatherworking, woodworking and stuff, I used to feel like if I'm doing all this stuff, I'm not working on something that needs to be solved. I'm like, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But I think it's just you get into this rut. Social media pushes the whole, you gotta be like 100% all. I'm like, no,
that's right. I think we are uniquely bad at like starting from the end point. It's like, what is the end goal here? And then keeping that in focus as we make our way through life, right? And because that's what it is. It's like, I feel like I'm not making progress, and it's completely, you're right, like 1,000% exacerbated by social media and everyone's highlight reels and all this content and everything like that. But it's like, if you are able to maintain that kind of like, what is this end goal? And like, one of the ways that I've actually started to do this, it's like a newer thing for me, but it's like, for things that I do with a degree of frequency, like call it routine or whatnot, like I'm right next to a lake. I love to run around the lake. It's like almost perfectly 5K, 3.22 miles around. I started thinking, it was like, how many more times am I going to do this in my life? Like, how many more like laps around the lake do I have in me? Right. And if you factor in where I'm going to be spending time, and, what my schedule is going to be looking like, and what my health or physical, being is going to be capable of, it's like, it's a fascinating thing and it helps keep things in context as to like, we have a finite amount of time to do stuff. It's really important that we focus on like, what is the life that we want to live, and where are we going? What are we trying to accomplish? And then being kind of steadfast in the decisions that you're making that you believe are best for you, which is like, sometimes it's just okay to eat fucking pint of ice cream and watch a movie and feel like right, and just like go to bed, like have a complete wash of a night, right? Like, that's not a terrible thing if it is what allows you to wake up at the beginning of the week and just get back to it, right?
There's this funny clip. You know who Alex Hormozi is, right?
Yes.
I feel like anyone in tech, if their feed is not riddled with Hormozi, they have the wrong social media.
Do you even tech, bro?
Yeah.
Do you?
This founder came to him saying, dude, I wake up at 4 a.m. I do gratitude journal, cold plunge, this, meditate, that, this. And like, I can't seem to get anything done because he's spending 5 hours doing like this whole morning routine.
The right things, right?
And Hormozi's like, just fucking get up and work. 4 to 9, your core working hours, you're doing all this other shit.
Yeah.
Just do the shit.
Yeah. And go do that afterwards.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I find it funny where people find ways to set everything up perfectly, right? Like,
they engineer themselves out of productivity.
Yeah. I've been putting off doing virtual recordings since I moved here, which is July 24th, right? Let's say give me a month. That's still, what's the date today? September 24th almost. So 3 months,
21st,
right?
21st,
Yeah. 3 months I didn't do a single virtual episode because in my mind, I need the perfect setup. I got to have a background. I got to do everything.
Yeah.
I got to have the air, all light, everything set up and have the right.
Yeah.
At the core of it, do people care? I would like it to look nice. Yeah. But I added an artificial roadblock for me to make progress on what matters, which is recording the episode, right? But again, I feel like, I don't know where that comes from, but it's just like human sentiment.
It's ego, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but like that is, it's like it's the most like personal and innate, infallible thing about us, which is like, we are going to be our own worst critic. My girlfriend and I, we literally are like, this is a consistent conversation we're having because we're both building businesses right now. We're both like literally launching and starting things from zero in the same kind of cadence. And
you want to plug what she's building?
Absolutely. She launched a clothing brand. It's an elevated leisure wear company. It's called Santai. Go check it out. It's SANTAI clothing. I don't know the website, but check it out on YouTube. Go search for it. It's fantastic. That's right. I know, right? No. So she's building this clothing brand. It's fantastic. It's completely based off of like her experience, like traveling the world, and like the clothes that she believes are like the staples for every person who's got, living their life on the go kind of thing.
Quick sidebar before.
Yeah.
Do you watch Kill Tony? Do you know what Kill Tony is?
Love Kill Tony. Have you been there live? Have you been live?
No, I haven't been able to get tickets. I haven't been able to. I'm trying to find a plug. I'm trying to get the founder of BL Comedy, who knows the Comedy Mothership guy, and
got it.
I'm trying to find a plug because I want to be the guy who's like, oh, you want tickets? I know someone.
Yeah. There you go.
But no, that hasn't happened yet. Okay. But his Madison Square Garden show, 25,000 people. I don't know how big Madison Square.
They did a Kill Tony at Madison Square Garden.
Two nights sold out and back to back.
No way.
He just put them on YouTube last 2 weeks.
No way.
It was paid. You could watch it live. And then he had to pay a wall for 3 weeks or something, and then he just put them both on YouTube, slightly edited.
Yeah.
And he had a bunch of bangers on, like he had like legends on, and then because he's realized over time that these bucket pulls you do, they're kind of shit, right? So if people are there for a show, you got to give them a show, right?
That's right.
He called a guy on stage, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my wife's doing this company." He's like, "What's the company?" He's like, "I don't remember the brand." He's like, if there was any time for you to
To not.
remember her
Yeah.
brand and website, it's
Bro,
live
I got the name right and
no,
the
no,
spelling, but the website, that's a tough one. It's like, yeah,
no,
sentai.com, Sentai
we'll link
clothing.
stuff. This is recorded, so I think it's
Perfect.
fine. But in that
Perfect.
moment,
Everyone go buy her clothes. When you get to the links, go straight there, buy her stuff.
he could have promoted her company to 20,000 people live.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know. I think those videos have 3 to 4
Yeah.
million views
Oh,
each.
totally.
And so
Right.
I'm like,
Just
dude, you bombed
fumbled the
it,
bag,
bro.
bro. You
Like
fumbled the
you.
bag, dude. Wife
But
was,
anyways, you were
she should
saying,
be
yeah, both
proper
of you are
mad.
building companies.
So we're both building companies, and we're actively, having to overcome that hurdle, which is like, we have an idea of what it is we're creating and want to bring to the world and how we want that to show up. And it's just really hard if it doesn't meet that expectation that we set, right? And I think that everyone is, kind of subject to that feeling, which is like, we are our own worst critic, right? And so, like, I'm going through it, she's going through it. I think that I mean, I've been working on my stuff a little bit longer, but it has been a little bit of an unlock for me as it relates to the content, like the social media, where like, me standing in front of a camera and like talking about stuff, I'm just like, this sucks. I hate every second of it. And then I have to go edit it and look at it more and like split it right and like make the transitions. And I was like, I hate everything about this. And what happens is like, you kind of find this balance and you get a little bit better. So you can start doing it more quickly, you know how to do it. And then you care a little bit less because you put the first one out and you're like, I just took 2 hours editing. So I'm doing these right now. I'm literally doing like co-ownership breakdowns where I'm like, it's better when someone will send it to me but I don't have a lot of reach. So sometimes I'll just pick a property and then I'll go look at it. And then I'll run kind of the financial analysis from like a co-applicant perspective. Right. And the math is pretty straightforward, as I'm sure you can imagine, but then you can start talking about the ability to like generate rental income, or if you want to like have different levels of like ownership or usage. So there's a lot of levers to pull, and it's really just about kind of like getting people more quickly and clearly to a point where like, oh man, the math, when I talk about actually co-owning a home with someone else, is much more reasonable than I was thinking, right?
Can
And
you
so,
co-own
yeah,
investment properties?
yeah, absolutely. You do it through like typically like a partnership LLC. Yeah. That's how most people do it. Like, the thing that people don't realize is that you can co-own your home with like unmarried people, right? Like I think that's the thing that like our general kind of consciousness is not like aware of. It feels like this thing that's like, oh, no one's talking about it, so it must not be a thing. And I'm like, pause. Like, I've now spent enough time talking to lenders and attorneys and people that have been doing this for years. I'm like, this is not only viable, but I think it might very well be kind of the way of the future, because I mean, like, people know it's like, housing is, it's not a tenable situation for so many people, right?
To take it back 2 steps, you said people are their own worst self-critics. I think the
Mm-hmm.
one thing I wanted to add to that was there's this, I want to say, unsaid rule that if you don't raise a couple $1 million, and if you're not a 10, 20, $50 million company, you're not successful in like the VC startup space.
Mm-hmm.
My only counter to that is, if you have a company that's profiting 5 to 10 grand a month, that's a really good business
Yeah.
until you can figure out how to scale it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like when people aim for these levels, like, oh, I'm not successful unless I do that, because that's what everyone talks about online. I'm always in the bank camp of, hey, if I'm able to do a SaaS company that makes me 10K a month
Yeah.
and I can do other shit,
You're doing better than
that's
99% of
more
the
than
people doing it.
enough until
That's
I
right.
figure out, do I want to actually figure out the growth? And is this even a growable business?
Right.
I had a friend go to YC. He's doing InsurTech. I think their market cap, like they could maybe become a $50-100 million company.
Mm-hmm.
One of the YC guys said, hey, you got to do AI. He's like, but we don't want to do AI. He's like, you got to do AI and raise it and see if this $1 billion opportunity works.
Yeah.
If not, that's fine. I want you to try AI. Because if you don't, you're going to cap out at 50 million ARR, like $50 million company. I don't know if there's ARR or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you go down the path you're going down, and we don't want that. And I
Yeah.
was like, if that's the sentiment, dude, $50 million company is a really good company.
Yeah.
But YC
Not
is
for
like, it's not
YC.
good enough for us, right?
Yeah.
And so now people start thinking, oh, if it's not good enough for YC, maybe it's not good enough at all. Maybe I
right.
just shouldn't do it because I don't see a path to go to $1 billion unicorn,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
And I feel like that is where I want to say the VC space gets it wrong. Because I think if you don't even start, you don't even reach that 10, 20, 30, you don't even know what the option is. You don't build the skills you need to build a unicorn. Maybe this is not the
Yeah.
unicorn. The next one is, but the next one is never going to become a unicorn because you never went through the motions of learning
first.
how to get there. I was
Yeah.
talking to a founder who I'm probably going to have on in a couple of weeks. They bootstrapped it to 30K MRR and kept it at that for 3 years. Three
Okay.
people all had full-time jobs
Oh, wow.
doing 30K MRR, 80% margins.
What was the company? What were they building?
It was like a Klaviyo alternative.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Klaviyo Shopify alternative.
Klaviyo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Klaviyo. Yeah.
And they last year they're like, do we want to grow this? And they're like, maybe. And then they're like, okay, like we know we've been doing this for a while. It's been coasting
Working.
at 30K.
Yeah.
Let's take the plunge, leave our jobs, and now it's at $1 million ARR. And so I'm like, they were in the 30K for 3 years. They're bootstrapped.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one told them that you have to be $1 million. No one told them you have to go to 10.
Yeah.
But they're
Yeah.
like, now we see a path to get to 50, and we're
Yeah.
trying to see if we can get there.
Right.
If not, we're at 1. We
That's
could
fine.
go to
And we're
3 next
splitting
year.
it 3. Yeah.
That's perfectly
You
fine,
have
right?
$1 million worth
yeah.
of
And so I just wanted to say
equity.
that a lot of this self-imposed like barriers and critique is based off what you see, what you hear, what other people are doing.
Totally.
And I just want to say that maybe that's not right for you, but just don't discount what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's not as big as what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I mean, the way that you just described your buddy's company, right? They got to this phase, but because they didn't take outside capital, it took them 3 years to kind of get to the point of conviction or belief that they're like, why don't we just keep scaling this thing up, right? It feels like we've got something that's working. To your other point about like bringing the investors, the YC, right? Like saying, a $50 million outcome is not, it's like, I think that's just a misunderstanding of incentives. I think that people who are building businesses and are not either doing the research or like, intimately familiar with venture capital or private equity or anything like that, it's like, you just need to understand what the person across the table is optimizing for, right? And you need to understand that that person has investors in their fund, that they're investing other people's money, and that money needs to generate a return. Otherwise, they don't get to go raise their next fund. And all of these types of things are not in the purview of people who are just building. Enough founders who are building, right? Especially first-time founders, not coming from those. And the entire world, I mean, especially in now, so especially like building Tomy is like, I spend all of my day thinking about incentives. Is like, how can you sell this through to a group of people in a way that will work for several years? And it's like, people just need to be really clear about what they want. And then we need to get really, really good at creating incentive structures and systems that help hold people accountable to doing what it is they say they want and need and expect. Right. And I think that we're, on the whole, collectively as humans, I think we're pretty shit at understanding the incentive structures that govern the world around us.
Before we dive into Tomy and sort of your challenges and what's going there,
For sure.
You're advising a bunch of companies. I think you're invested in a couple, affiliated to some funds in some capacity as an LP. What's one thing that, if you talk to founders, what's one thing you look for before deciding should you put capital in them or not?
I will, like anything that I'm about to say, I will caveat with the fact that like I am an amateur angel investor. I am not a sophisticated capital allocator by any stretch of the imagination.
We're gonna tag this segment investing advice by
Cody. Yeah, exactly right. This is not legal or professional advice, any of it. A lot of the investments, to be completely transparent, have been like, relationship based. It's like it's trying to support someone that I believe in, or I want to support, right? It's like either I believe you can do it, or I want to be able to help you, right? So there's not a in terms. It just kind of depends on what it is you're looking at on the LinkedIn profile. But there's one in specific, which is a company called Net Zero that I've been involved with for 6 years now. I just wholeheartedly believe in business, and the problem set, which is basically this company that's taking food waste at like commercial scale. Think of like the amount of spent grain or barley or wheat that breweries or distilleries generate, right? By making their beer or whiskey or anything like that. You get these like big operations just go through these massive like amount. You've got a tremendous amount of byproduct. Um, and so this company is developed, and it is a family friend. So that again, it straddles both, which is like wanted to be supportive and totally believe in what the founder's building. Yeah, I mean they're basically saying like we want to be able to work with the largest food manufacturers in the world and take their byproduct and upcycle it into reusable food ingredients that happen to be like more nutrient dense and better for you and all this sort of stuff. And so, that's when I actually joined the board earlier this year, late last year. So, like have been close with this one for a while, but yeah, these are, that's kind of the thinking is like, I probably invest a little bit more with my heart than my head. It's like, what seems like a good problem that we should, be putting our energy into solving. Right.
Makes sense.
Is a
That's
big
nice.
part of the criteria.
I
It's
think,
nice.
I mean, I would somewhat call that a thesis that you have, right? Even if you don't call it a thesis.
Yeah, totally.
And I feel like I started angel investing a couple of years ago, joined a bunch of groups in India. Like we were talking before we started. I have a thesis that India is a good place to be for the next 5-10 years. And at the core of it, what I realized is I don't have a thesis yet, right? I don't, like, I'm seeing all these companies, all these pitch decks and everything, and I don't have a thesis on what to invest in, right?
Yeah.
I'm just, oh, this looks good, founder looks
Yeah.
good, blah, 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 right?
Right.
Also, another thing this angel said that he's like, the reality is if you just started and you're seeing this deal, I probably passed on it 6 months ago. And he's like a really notable
Right.
investor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, just keep that in mind, right? Your first couple of bets are probably not going to be your best bets.
Yeah.
So figure out what your moat is. Is your moat the friendship? Is
Yeah.
your moat you have GTM access to US? Is
Yeah.
your moat you're a fintech person who's been in fintech for 30 years? And that's what you bring to the table. So you're
Your
going to get
platform,
deals. Yeah.
right? Yeah. Right.
And so
Yeah.
you have to find what your moat is and why people want you to be an angel investor.
Yeah.
Plus, can you find some edge, right? You just know a bunch of people, you have connections to all, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're just going to go through deal sourcing, angel groups and stuff, most likely is people are passing on the deal, which is why it's going a level. And like,
That's right.
starts at the most, I really want this guy. He doesn't want it. Okay, who's the next person?
Who's the next person like them?
And just keep that in mind, right? But I think that was something that just unlocked, like a lot of it comes down to what's your network and who, like you said, you're investing in friends, right? And those are people who are probably not going to go to angel groups in SF or New York, right? So if you don't know that person, if I don't know you, I have no access to that investment ever, right? But anyways, just a sidebar.
It also too, like, I mean, I think it's worth it for you to look at it through the lens of like, there is capital that I can give to this opportunity, but why else might it be interesting for me to be a part of this, right? Like getting access to the team or to the other, being closer or more aligned with the other angels that are going to be investing in this company too, or just more exposure to this space, right? Like I do agree. I mean, I think it's really hard to, I mean, you're obviously you're from India and you're spending still spending time out there, right? So there's a higher degree of familiarity, but I've had opportunities to invest in Indian startups when I was in Southeast Asia, and I don't know anything. I don't know anything in terms of like being able to make an educated decision about whether or not this would be a good investment. But yeah, like to each their own. You got to like, there is invested capital in the return that you can realize from a good investment. And then there's a tremendous amount of other kind of like soft considerations that could also be value accretive to you aside from just financial returns.
Makes sense. Do you have a hard stop or are you good?
I'm good. No, I'm good.
Okay, sweet.
I'm good.
Cool. Coming to Tomi, you started Tomi. It's been accumulating for a couple of years. The idea, the thought, percolating.
Yeah.
When you decided to like, oh, I'm gonna do this, what's step one? Where do you start? Do you make a deck? Do you make a site? Are you reaching out to me? Like, what is step one of that journey?
Step one of the journey was probably the website, because I've been thinking about it long enough and like what I want to do and how I want to frame it. And so I think, it was probably like, let's go put something together and put it out into the world that kind of draws a line in the sand and says like, we're here now.
Break it
And
down. How do you go about it? Are you working with someone? Are you building yourself? Contract?
well, I
Like,
mean, yeah, the
walk me
big
through the
like
step.
yeah, the big first thing was like I had a former a buddy of mine and someone I formerly worked with at Carta was kind of wrapping his thing up. He was doing his own startup, and he was going to close the doors on it and was kind of looking for the next thing. And so the timing aligned where I felt like I could like do this in partnership with someone. And we were like, let's try it out. And he's going to be like, I can help you for a little bit. It wasn't like a full on, like, I'm going to be your co-founder, but it was like, I'm going to push you off the cliff and I'm going to like jump off for a little bit. Right. And we'll see, how long it goes for. It went for a few months. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a big, for me, again, kind of to the point where it's like the belief that like either like you don't know what you're doing or you're not capable of getting it done. Like those are real things, especially when it is that kind of like that, that inflection point of like doing it or not doing it and just allowing the status quo to kind of keep going. But yeah, I would say like he was like, let's do this. I was like, cool, I'm gonna come down to LA and we're gonna hang out for a handful of weeks, and we're gonna build something. And so we designed the website and launched that, and then in tandem with that, we designed our first kind of lead gen tool, which you can check it out. Go to livetomi.com/calculator. There's a link on the homepage. Which allows you to take active listings across. It's kind of platform agnostic. So you can go to realtor.com or you can go to Redfin or you can go to Zillow. You can take an active listing, you can bring it to Tomi, you can drop it in, and then we can start helping you model kind of like this shared homeownership, structure. And you can very quickly understand, look, if I've got 2 people or 3 people or 4 people and I plug in some of these, recurring expense assumptions and taxes and all that sort of stuff, what's it going to cost me every month to do this, right? And yeah, like the way that I see it, like especially right now and where we are just kind of in the year, in this moment in time, like I think this is one of the, like I'm actively targeting and reaching out to people who are like doing ski leases, like winter leases in, Vail or Tahoe or Mammoth, right? People that are doing those on a recurring basis and they're like, yeah, like we spend a premium every month to have access for 4, 5, 6 months of the year to go to this place, which we love to do. And we're doing it year in and year out, right? We're getting our epic ski passes and doing all that sort of, we're invested. But what if we could, maybe we just go and take the full leap. We go buy the place and then we have the ability to cash flow it when it's not being used. And we just kind of like take that next step and we do it with the people that we've been doing the ski lease with, right? I'm just helping people kind of like run the numbers and make the math make sense or give them a more educated understanding of what that could look like. Because I think that is like it's a really interesting possibility now, especially as we're seeing so much inventory come online. Supply is creeping up like at a much faster clip. It's not at pre-pandemic levels in terms of just the overall housing supply. But it's increasing at an elevated rate in large part because interest rates are coming down and prices are starting to soften, and the consumer health in general is, I would say, less so than it has been for the last 15 years. Yeah, so it's like one of the things that I'm doing right now that I think is pretty interesting for folks that like find themselves in this type of situation would be basically engaging with properties that are leasing and trying to get them to pre-agree to a lease to own type situation where it's like, we're going to go and we're going to pay for this ski season. We're going to go do this. But we want the option to buy it if you're open to it, right, at the end of the year. And, this percentage of what we've paid will go towards that down payment. Yeah, man. So that means that's the I think one of the challenges and opportunities about, trying to facilitate shared homeownership more broadly is that there's so many use cases. Like I just got done going down the rabbit hole on instead of doing crash pads, which is what like airline pilots and flight attendants use, is like, if you are being stationed in a place that is not a crash pad is basically if you are working for Delta, right? But you live in Milwaukee, Delta's HQ, or you might get based in Chicago, or you might get based in Atlanta. Yeah, which is where they are. But that basically means that like you've got a multi-year contract where that is your home station, regardless of whether your home is there or not. And so people will spend a lot of time in these cities that they would not necessarily call home. I'm basically having conversations with pilots around like, would this be advantageous to you if you could find a couple other pilots and you guys actually bought this place in Atlanta and you could, figure out cycling through it and when you needed to be there, and you've got something that is hopefully going to be, value accretive in the long run, and also allow you another lever to pull in terms of kind of tax optimization, right? You can put your capital to work in a little bit more of a sophisticated way for a lot of people who right now don't have the ability to kind of clear that homeownership hurdle right now, right? So, yeah,
Have you looked at nurses?
We've done a little bit of rental to like midterm rentals here in Minneapolis to nurses. So traveling nurses is one thing that I'm familiar with, but I haven't. But they're not staying long enough to where I think that they would actually make the financial commitment to purchase a home.
I think there may be a small niche within a niche there. Yeah. I do know there's some traveling nurses that like constantly go back to one or two places that they like a lot. And so maybe there's some angle there where if you can find the right group of people,
that's right,
who go back enough to one city every couple months or whatever,
that's
right?
That's right.
Maybe there's some scope there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Like I have kind of like the airline stuff is like probably like a sub cohort of a sub cohort, but what you're talking about is like kind of how I've categorized as like this vocational user base, which is like it could be active or former like military personnel, it could be airlines employees, it could be nurses or doctors. Doctors are another one, like that kind of in the same kind of the medical professionals.
Do you know who Nathan Latka is? Founder Path.
That name sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he does a bunch of like webinar shilling, and like if you're on his email list, you get his email every couple days.
Yeah.
But he has Founder Path, which is a SaaS metrics for SaaS companies, and then he has a Latka fund where he basically gives debt to SaaS companies making more than $1 million. Okay. I randomly saw a webinar last night. He talks about this concept of a SaaS plus company, where he's basically saying that and it's all data backed. He's done over 3,000 podcasts with different founders, and it's all like, hey, show me the data. Like, hey, 1 to 3 to 5. What's your number? Show me your team. Like he does very data back stuff.
Yeah.
He's like all these SaaS plus companies that are doing a couple $100 million in revenue. They're all like agency plus SaaS plus service, service plus something. Yep. And it was just thinking, and I'm like, there's a model where you do this where SaaS product to own and manage the home, plus a service to do short-term rentals because a pilot's only in Atlanta 3 months.
That's right.
And I don't know, you're probably thinking about this, but it just, I literally saw this like last night at 11 and I was like, oh, maybe there's something there down the line, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. You're spot on. Like the way I think about it is kind of like this elevated like Tomy plus, and this is what AI becomes really compelling because it is such a leverage unlock for like limited resource companies, right? Or people are just looking for additional leverage, right? I would say that Tomy in at present is basically a services company. Like I've got lead gen tools and we're leveraging AI, in a couple of different ways. Like I already have a trained LLM that is not actively deployed for like a user, but is like something that it's trained on all of our data, right? So I've got like templatized co-ownership agreements or tenant in common agreements. This agent is trained on because that is what I see as kind of being this like really compelling and interesting opportunity, which is like for people who don't have another option around homeownership, if this is the only way is to pool resources and increase your buying power to get into the game, and that can accelerate your timeline to being in the game as an owner, right? All of the challenges and complexities and hard things come from like what happens once you're in the house, right? Because you're not aligned in terms of like timelines. Like, are you going to be there for 10 years or 5 years or, 48 months? Is it going to be a crash pad or is it going to be your weekend getaway spot? Or are you going to, throw parties and, like getting people aligned and then leveraging, I think AI, I've got this kind of hot take as of like a week ago. Did you see that New York Times article about the debunk bot? Did you read this? Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Okay. So MIT created this LLM and it has proven to be relatively proficient at talking people out of believing in conspiracy theories, like better than whatever else the metric is that they're using to measure, the ability to do so. And when I was reading this, like I just like was like, it feels like this was the first thought, like the moment that I had this thought, but it's like, we are spending another 30 minutes. we are spending all of this time focused on the quality of the output from these models and these agents, right? We've got all of these quantitative and qualitative tests, right? That like they're getting scored and everything on. And we're spending very little time talking about how we as humans are going to interpret that information and how that interpretation is going to differ from getting that information from another person, right? And so I think that is there's like a huge opportunity, because I don't know, did you see the like roast my LinkedIn profile? Have you seen this one? Okay. So like that's this whole thing like I wrote about. It was like an AI agent can go through and like tear me apart, right? Talk about all of like the stupid titles that I've had or how I've jumped around from company to company. It can get away with that. It's like, oh, because it's like it's a non-living thing that doesn't have feelings and doesn't really know me. It's just analyzing and it's been programmed to do this. Whereas like if you would have, cherry picked a couple of those comments and like your buddy comes at you and says those things, you are going to have a completely different reaction, right? And so this is the thing that I think we're missing right now, and we're just not talking enough about it. I don't think we're talking at all about it. But it's like, what are going to be the near-term opportunities to insert artificial intelligence into the way that we interact with each other that helps us be kinder, be a little bit more collaborative, get over the disagreements or the conflicts that we're facing? And I see this 100% as being a use case for shared homeownership, is like, being able to like go, if you and I have a place and, you're thinking about getting a dog and our agreement only allows for part-time pets, you get to go to, the what I refer to as kind of the homie, like your Tomy homie. This is your agent, and you can be like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a dog. Like, let's look through the docs, and once you realize that technically owners can't get the dogs unless we've got everybody's consent, is like, well, let's draft a resolution so the next time that we talk at our member meeting, we can go over it. And you're like, look, I'm thinking about getting a dog, and this is kind of the timeline, and here's what I'm proposing. I want to update the the co-ownership agreement to do this, and AI can do that in 30 seconds. Whereas like this would be a much bigger lift for someone to have to do if they were doing it all, if they were tracking everything manually, right? Yeah. So I could see this being for like AI for, athletic like judges and referees, for couples therapy, right? Like inner office, disputes, right? Like teams, inner team conflicts, right?
I think the notion, and like to your point, in all of these situations, if you know it's an AI, you just don't respect it.
You don't respect it.
No, so like as a person, if an AI comes and tell me, "Hey, don't do this," I'm just gonna shrug it off. Versus if head of HR comes and says something, there's more weight to that, right? And so like I see what you're saying about AI helping these situations. My assumption, I could be wrong about this. My assumption is when someone knows it's an AI bot or an AI something, I don't know if it's just the word of seriousness or like the amount
credibility
of,
or the amount of
credibility,
like weight,
the weight of that just isn't as much.
Well, the reason that the weight is not as much, given the example that you said, is because like the head of HR has the ability to kind of fire you probably in that
And
moment.
so what I'm saying is, like, to your point, AI is going to get to the point of assisting a lot of these situations.
Totally.
But when it comes down to being effective in these situations, I think there's going to be a fine line between does someone take an action and actually, like you said, office disputes, right? Does someone actually take action and change their behavior if an AI is sort of helping correct that situation? Or do they just shrug it off like, oh, fuck it, it's an AI bot?
Yeah, but what if, totally. And I think I could see it going both ways, where like if that favor is ruled on your side, right? If the AI ruling is in your favor, you're like, oh, this thing is smart and it knows exactly what it's doing. And if it's not, you're like, stupid technology, right? I guess the other way that I see it is like if there is a deterministic outcome in play, which is like two teams that are vying over the same budget, right? The same amount of money for their like, their team budgets, right? And they're putting together their proposals, and then this thing is able to kind of, and I do agree, like I don't think this is going to be 100% like automated and outsourced, but I think the coupling of that to arbitrate, to mediate in the real-time moments. I just think if you think about how many interpersonal conflicts that are happening on any given day, whether it's like, tenant landlord or spousal or familial or like civil, kind of like legal issues, right? It feels like you're going to start to see this like creep in, and because it's going to be really effective is my belief.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, I agree. With Tomy, what are you currently working on? What are the current challenges? What's top of mind for you?
Yeah.
I think you've gotten the messaging down. You have a lot of potential customer bases. You have all these lead gen SEO tools.
Yeah.
What's next in the journey?
I think I need to get a lot better at being intentional around the language being used. So one thing that I have come to realize is that this is a disparate space because there is no standardization around terms and keywords. And I've spent enough time on like SEM Rush running all like the competitor analysis and doing all these things. I have paid for it. I do not. It's expensive, so I'm not. It's not in the budget anymore. But I've done like a month or two. But like you've got language around like shared home ownership, home co-ownership, joint ownership, shared equity in homes, right? Like there's a lot of unorganized language being used for people to try to figure out how to answer a lot of these questions that people are having. I think these conversations are happening at a much higher rate than most people would assume. And a lot of them are happening, you know, the boys are getting together, the girls are getting together for a Friday night after work over drinks and talking about getting away for the weekend. If you're in San Francisco, you're talking about going to Tahoe. If you're in LA, you're talking about going to Palm Springs or Joshua Tree, New York. You're going to right? Like there's a bunch of these getaway destination places. And it's like, God, wouldn't it be nice if we just like had our own place we could go to whenever, right? Or you're with your family. You're with your family and do this. Like my family talks about this stuff all the time. We want to go get a place up in northern Minnesota by the Lake Superior and Canadian border. These conversations happen at a much higher rate, but there is not an easy way for them to take action on those conversations. And so really what it is we're aiming to do is like put the right content and message out in the right places, using the right language that allows people to, one, find us so we can just kind of continue to breadcrumb them, bring them into the universe, and just help them get a little bit better equipped to like have more meaningful conversations with people they would seriously entertain doing this with. And it's hard because there's a lot of like, there's financial considerations, there's lifestyle considerations, there's social and interpersonal consideration, there's timing considerations, right? Like buying a house is it's the biggest financial decision that just about anyone is going to ever make. If you do it with other people, it's going to be, a fraction of that financial decision, hopefully, because you can, pool the resources and split the costs. But you're multiplying the number of variables by a factor of 2, 3, 4, 5, right? However many people you've got. And so it's a hard problem. And I think I'm really focused on getting the messaging to the right people and then laying out a path for them that says like, first and foremost, like the way that we do onboardings is like, the first step is having one person, like usually there's one person in every group. I call it like your co-owner captain, right? You got to have the captain of the group who's like, I'm the person who's organized and I want this enough. And I, have strong enough relationships with everyone that they're going to they're going to quarterback the folks down the field. Like Tommy might be the coach. The captain is the quarterback, right? It's really just like helping these people understand is like, first off, the first step is understanding what you want, right? Like, do you want a condo in New York because you want to live there, right? Or do you want a place a couple hours out of the city because you want to be able to spend time with your partner and your dog? Are the people you're doing it with people you want to spend time with there? Or do you guys want to just do it asynchronously, right? It's like all of these types of things. What are the financial expectations and objectives? Are you doing this because you want to optimize your earnings and your tax recognition, right? Do you see this as an investment, or is this just because you want to align more closely with the people in your life who matter most to you, right? Like there's so many things that people need to like have some degree of clarity on because they need to be able to communicate their why to everyone else in a meaningful way, because that's what we use to develop the legal agreements.
Also being particular about like, hey, if something breaks, it comes out of a common pool and it's not you broke it, you fix it, right? And so I think that
depends on who break. Like if like
but no, in my understanding, if I'm doing a co-ownership and something just breaks wear and tear and something happens, like if I'm intentionally going and like knocking down a wall, I would say that's different.
If the dog that you just got that we agreed that you got goes and like rips up the couch, like that's an obby liability as opposed to
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So messaging, reaching out to the right folks. Are you talking more about like blogs and articles, social media? How are you planning on refining and getting this out there?
The marketing efforts have been, I would say, like the focus of the business the last 2 to 3 months. We've done a lot of testing, a lot of static posts on Facebook that have gotten 0 to 1 impressions, like we were talking about earlier. And I think honestly the thing that I'm coming to realize is like, one, I mean, you can always just be funny and like try to get a cheap laugh. Like that helps with reach and awareness. Like that is one thing that I think we're honing in on, just like trying to be a brand that people like want to follow because it is entertaining. But then there's like, you got to eventually get into kind of the meat of what it is we're doing. And so that involves a lot of like educational stuff. I haven't been able to nail doing the educational thing in a really time effective way, like as far as like me being on screen and that sort of stuff. But I'm doing blog posts. I'm trying to turn those blog posts into some sort of like video component.
Check out Notebook LM by Google.
Done.
Someone who put an interesting use case on a Slack group I'm on, where he took his newsletter and Notebook LM turned it into like a 6-minute conversation. And so if you have blog posts and newsletters, I've been thinking about this. Maybe you use Notebook LM, turn it into a conversation, and just do podcasts, right? Just auto upload 5-minute episodes
of basically AI agents just talking to each other.
Yeah. Oh, using the content from your newsletter or your
interesting.
And so it's a channel that doesn't require you to do any extra work, right? It's a touch point for something you've already done. And you can be transparent about, hey, this was transcribed using AI. I don't think people care as long as what you're talking about is interesting, right? So
no, that's a great shout. And it is all just another reason that I think
Notebook LM by Google sponsored me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And we should all be, this is investment advice. Just kidding, but seriously. We should all be investing in data centers. Like the rate at which we're going to just be producing more and more stuff.
I don't even know how you would go about investing in data centers.
I mean, a lot of people are investing in NVIDIA, which is kind of like that's their investment in data centers right now. But the long form stuff is really good. I do think that video kind of trumps all, right? So if you can put together compelling stuff in any form of like video, it just needs to be valuable, right? And it needs to be educational. Needs to help people kind of think more sophisticatedly about the problems we're trying to solve and about what's possible in terms of like doing these types of things correctly. And a lot of that is just being organized with all the information I have like in my Google workspace or in my brain. And it's happening, it's coming together, but there's definitely a lot of work ahead for sure. If you've got any suggestions, I'm all ears. Other than Notebook LM, good shout.
If someone's listening can help you out, what are you looking for help with more immediately?
I just want to have more conversations with people. Like, come if you want to own a home, if you've thought about doing it with other people in your life, like let's talk. Like no pressure. It's going to be all about just like giving you the facts and the questions to ask and really trying to equip you to have meaningful conversations with those people in your life you would consider doing it with. If you don't, if it's not you and it's someone else, let me know. If you've got ideas about where these people are doing a lot of kind of like Facebook group stuff, doing, Reddit and those types of things. But I think it's like just trying to have as many conversations. I feel like right now I'm spending more time than anyone in the world thinking about this. And now I really want to like ratchet up just the amount of feedback and input I'm getting from more disparate kind of people, groups.
And we'll link stuff in the description and stuff for you, so don't worry about that.
Yeah. Visit the website and also play with all the tools and stuff. That's my other app.
I like ending episodes with some rapid fire stuff. So I'll shoot some questions at you.
I'm ready.
What are 3 resources you'd recommend to entrepreneurs early in their journey or just trying to figure shit out?
Use AI. I use ChatGPT. I'm on the paid subscription. Like, pick one of these things and go watch it, like 3 YouTube videos about prompting and like ask it all of the questions and have it, poke holes into all of your assumptions. That's probably like 1, 2, and 3. But the other one would be like, depending on what it is you're trying to build, or what your thesis is, like go stress test it, go talk to more people. That's something that I'm okay at sometimes, but I probably on the whole need to be a lot better at. And then what would the third be? Take walks. Give yourself the opportunity to slow down. And like, if you're going to work really hard and like do a bunch of stuff, put a bunch of stuff in, if you're feeling stressed or tired or like not knowing what to do, like default to going outside, being in the sun and taking a walk.
It's funny you say these 3 because every time I've asked someone this, it's always this book, that podcast, this thing, go do this vlog, whatever. Mm-hmm. The first time I think someone's given me 3 non-physical
like actual pieces of like resources.
Yeah. Interesting. No,
check out my blog. Good. That's another one too. Go read the Tell Me blog.
Nice. What's your startup tech stack? How do you run your company right now? And give me top to bottom everything.
top to bottom everything. Okay. We are
Carta for
hosting
cap table and then
Carta for cap table. Yeah, right. If I was like, we're using Pulley, I would get a lot of emails. Webflow for hosting the website. I'm using Slack for communicating with the team. I am using Google Workspace. So I still call it G Suite. G Suite's such a better term than Google Workspace. It's just so much better. I'm using ChatGPT as my AI agent. Um, we're hosting. We're doing serverless hosting on Vercel. So hosting the marketing site on Webflow, hosting the app on Vercel, using some third-party data inputs. Data Affinity. Whoop, whoop. There's a name drop for you guys. Data Affinity. Yeah, they're in Austin. They're in Austin actually. Data company in Austin. So maybe you can get a connect there. What else? CapCut. Gotcha. I'm using CapCut. I'm a pro CapCut user now. All the social medias, like I'm trying to get on all of them. Follow me, get to me on all the things. I think, like, honestly, like, that's probably
random thing I'll throw at you just hopped in my mind.
Yeah.
You were talking about social content being on camera.
Yeah.
Try one of these. Just do like a recorded session with someone asking you the questions and just explain it to them. And then use something like FastCut. CapCut, I don't think CapCut does clips for you, but I think FastCut, Opus, these are the ones I've been aware of right now. Okay. You can cut it up into clips, do some fancy editing with CapCut, and then
I've done it. So I did this with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend's Australian, so she's got this fantastic Australian accent. The last time we did it, and I probably have an hour worth of content. And it's just like founder FAQ, except I got such shit sleep the night before. I look just completely strung out, and so I was like, it does matter, man. It does. Like, I was like, it doesn't matter. And then I looked at it, I was like, oh, dude, I do not look well. I do not look healthy. You're right. It doesn't. And I'm sure AI can probably like auto tune that thing to make it look great. It's so true.
Said he looks like shit. He was working the night before, overslept. I woke him up at 10 o'clock for a 10 o'clock podcast. He got it to the studio at 10:25. If he hears this, you know who he is. But but I was like, well, that's the reality of being a founder, right? Like, why do you want to hide the lack of sleep and the grind and like come all looking pretty at, like, I mean, if that's it, right? And I think that adds to the story. And like, people have been talking about founding story, this, that. So I mean, if I was you, I would post it. But I mean, again,
and I literally, we just spent a segment of this podcast talking about that whole thing, which is like, you got to get over it, right? And then there's me coming back to it, right? So it's like, no one is infallible. And to that point, I will post it, and you will see it, and you'll be like, I see what he's talking about.
That's all the questions I had for you. So amazing. I think we're good there.
But
though I'll probably reach out. I'll need to do 5 more minutes with you. There's a segment I do, which is where I ask you one question from a previous guest, and then I ask you to ask me a question for the next guest. But I don't have that question with me right now, so
you can't wing it. You can't.
I'm trying to remember, but I did a bunch of recordings in August, and it's been a whole month and a half since my last recording. And I'm just blanking. I am just completely blanking.
Well, if it doesn't feel like you missed a beat, you got right back into the swing of things.
But
I love your show, dude. I've been listening to a bunch of episodes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love what
we're doing more clips now. So subscribe on YouTube and watch my clips, because I want to get monetized on YouTube. I have this personal goal where I just want to make $1 from YouTube, because I've never made money from something,
a social media platform,
without wanting to make money from it. And I just want $1. I don't care about making money on YouTube, right?
Can I just send you $1? Would that help?
But it's not YouTube monetization, right?
TikTok. I did see something on TikTok that was like they're doing some promotion for smaller content creators. You have to get unblocked, but
no. So I just made a different account. I just made Fundsandfounders.
Yeah,
I had Fundsandfounders, and I just made fun with the letter N. I'm like, fun.
Okay. That feels like one of the ones too, where there's real potential money to be made on that.
The amount of time I spend going down on business ideas and trends and TikTok shop and how to growth hack, and it's just too much in my brain. And then I'm like, I gotta do that, and I'm like, no,
I know it is. There is absolutely a correlation between how much time I spend on social media and then how much just like existential anxiousness that is in my life. Like it's true, right? Like and this is a requirement for what I'm trying to build, is to like get the message out there and meet the people where they are. But it's like, I have a for the longest time, I used social media as, yeah, it was like my personal highlight reel, and I would throw something up every now and again, or I'd go through waves or spurts of like doing stories if I'm traveling. But I didn't spend enough time on it to like really, like the Social Dilemma, the documentary. I was like, I get it, and it makes a ton of sense, and I'm close enough to technology to like, where like, yes, that's right. But I didn't have firsthand experience. Like I didn't feel it. And I now in the last like 12 months have felt that, where it's like you're seeing all of this stuff and you've got like so much information to compartmentalize and digest. And it's like, and it does not feel good.
You
And I
have
can,
no idea what I do you know the podcast My First Million?
yes,
They
yes.
had Isaac French on. I met Isaac at some event in Austin. I followed a bunch of his stuff. He does Airbnb like real estate stuff. So he
Okay.
like takes pieces of land,
Isaac French,
transforms
reach
it,
out, holler.
transforms. He's I think he's very approachable if you DM him on Twitter and or
Coming,
Instagram.
Isaac.
And he does these properties where he'll paint a whole picture. He'll do cabins in Waco and like sold
Okay.
his property for $7 million or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that, I'm like, oh, I'm in Arkansas and like very pretty outdoors. And a lot of people are moving to Bentonville because of Walmart and relocation. And like,
Yep.
it's sort of like booming from like, it's supposed to be Austin, what Austin was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, let me go
See that.
see. I spent like an hour on Zillow yesterday looking for land. I'm like, let me see. Can I buy a piece of land and make a side project? I'm like, it's probably not doable, but it's just that
It is 1000% doable. What do you mean it's not doable?
from a skill set and focus point of view.
Well, I'm here to help. That's what
But no,
like.
it to your point, right? Like you see all these things and you're like, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Like I know that's a good idea. I want to do it. I know I'm probably not the right person to do it, but it's like you always like you want to dip your toe in a shiny object syndrome. But
That's right. That's right. Well, that is like the future state of what I see. Like the opportunity for Tomy being is like, actually, we're starting with single family homes because everything's already built and we can get people in there. You know, less likely that they're like governed by some HOA, right? Which is another layer of like, you know, hurdles that you would have to get over for shared home ownership. I 1000%. I've had conversations with people that are like, talk to me when you're ready to do like land development and community development, which I'm like, this is kind of the natural, what would be the natural progression of what it is we're doing. So this conversation between you and I here about land in Bentonville or outside Bentonville is not over.
have you talked to builders and developers who build small subdivisions?
I have an investment in one in Texas that's basically doing this with like prefabbed homes, like community development. I have not gone there yet with Tomy, but I also think that is a unique way to go. Where, yeah, once we get to a certain like scale, and you know, once we're a little bit more established, I would say like, yeah, like working with actual community and building developers to like design properties that are a little bit more like thoughtfully laid out for people if they were to get both to like cohabitate, but not in a romantic partnership, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Appreciate you going off on tangents with me on random shit. But
That's what it's all about.
where can folks find you? What do you want to plug? What do we link for you? Where should they reach out?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything is on the website, livetomy.com. If you literally just Google live, LIVE TOMI, it'll be the first thing that pops up. Contact me there. Contact me on Instagram, on TikTok, LinkedIn. It's get_Tomy. Yeah, we'll link it all. Yeah, but so like reach out to me on all of these things. I've got a newsletter that I'm putting out every Friday. If you're interested in real estate, if you're interested in kind of this, you know, shared home ownership cohabitation scene, that would be, you know, that's probably not a bad thing to jump in on. But otherwise, yeah, like I just come talk to me. I'm friendly and I want to chat.
Sounds good. But no, appreciate the time. I know I took a lot of your time this morning, but
I loved it. I appreciate you having me.
yeah.